Today, we're entering sacred territory, the realm of spiritual powers, and why they're a trap. You've probably seen the circus. You know the one. Modern gurus showcasing miracles, lightworkers flashing their psychic badges, influencers whispering about telepathy, energy downloads, quantum manifestations, and kundalini rockets to the stars. It's seductive, and that's the problem. Even in ancient times, the sages warned, this isn't new. The spiritual path has always forked. One way leads to the self, the other, powers, performances, delusion. In Indian traditions, spiritual or paranormal powers are called siddhis. And the great sage Ramana Maharshi had this to say about them.
The self is the most intimate and eternal being, whereas the siddhis are foreign. Occult powers manifest only where there is ego.
And that's the crux. Powers require an ego to wield them, and others, other than yourself, to see them. Realization destroys this separation. So if someone is busy displaying their powers, whether genuine or not, they're not free. They may be powerful, but they're not at peace, because they still need you to see them. Let me tell you a story. A visitor once bragged in Ramana's presence that his guru had died, been buried, and returned 3 years later in a new body to give teachings. It was clearly meant to impress. Ramana didn't even blink. He stood up for lunch, paused at the door, and said,
Though a man may enter ever so many bodies, has he found his true home?
See, someone can change forms, do tricks, levitate, read minds, or manifest food out of thin air, and still suffer. Still chase approval, still live in fear. Because the powers are still his. And as long as there's ownership, there is ego. And as long as there is ego, there is no peace. Another story, this one from Papaji, who was a disciple of Ramana. A young seeker asked him about Kundalini Yoga and shared his pain in the first chakra. Papaji smiled and told him about a yogi he met in the Himalayas. This yogi had trained for 12 years. He could fly, manifest food, speak every language, travel to other realms. But not one of those powers brought him peace. So what did Papaji do? He took the yogi's magic staff, his symbol of immortality, and threw it into the river. Not to be cruel, to free him, because until that pride was gone, the self couldn't be seen. Powers don't lead to God, the source, or the self. Humility does. Love, devotion, and surrender do. As Papaji said,
You're trying to be a bird, so you'll be born as one.
you see, there are two kinds of siddhis, or spiritual powers. One kind is acquired through austerities, drugs, mantras, or obsessive concentration. These are fragile, ego-driven, and lead nowhere lasting. The other kind? They may arise after realization, unsought, like fragrance from a flower. But even then, the jnani, which is someone who has attained true self-knowledge, doesn't use them, not for gain, not for show. As Ramana said,
The force of his self-realization is far more powerful than the use of all other powers.
Let's take a breath here. Why are we even talking about this? Because spiritual ego is the last and subtlest trap. It says, now that I've awakened, I should have powers, signs, validation. But that's just the mind trying to make enlightenment into another identity. Ramana said,
He who thinks he is the doer is also the sufferer.
"You're already that. The powers you crave are born of ignorance, and the self is not a show. In fact, seeking powers will increase your suffering. Because once you get a taste of fame, admiration, supernormal ability, you become addicted. You need others to witness your specialness. And if they don't, you feel worthless. Or worse, you feel challenged, offended. How dare they not see? One of the ugliest symptoms of this shows up in spiritual communities online. Someone posts a bit of their wisdom. Others question it. They may even disagree. And the original poster replies,
Casting pearls before swine.
It sounds biblical. But what it really says is,
You're too ignorant to recognize my brilliance.
it's not meant to help. It's not meant to uplift. It's a shield of superiority thrown up by a spiritual ego that feels threatened. And here's the deeper tragedy. Even if you become the greatest Siddha, with the greatest powers the world has ever seen, someone will always come along with more. More powers, more followers, more miracles. And the ego, if it's still alive, will suffer all over again. You see, the separation of self and other, built of specialness, just instead of victimhood, continues. That's not freedom. That's deeper bondage, because an enlightened identity is worse than suffering a victim identity. Why? Because you'll not want to let go of it. You won't doubt and question it. So you will never realize your glorious, true, yet humbling reality. Yes, it's humbling because there is no longer anything to compare it to. Everything is that. And it's glorious because everything is that. So again, in order to display spiritual powers, there must be others to recognize them. Not just to admire you, but others must appear to exist to you for that admiration. That means there is no jnana, knowledge, in the one who displays them, because they are displaying them for someone other than themselves, and there isn't any. There is not two. Let me end with this. You don't need fireworks. You don't need visions or voices or third eye downloads. You don't even need to be spiritual. You just need silence. Because the true spiritual power, the only one worth anything, is peace. Not as a state, but as your very being. When the ego dies, what's left is not superhuman. It's no one separate, and so no person. The same single self of all apparent selves radiates the real power. The power that needs nothing, the power that harms nothing, the power that remains when everything else disappears. So if you find yourself reaching for powers, stop, turn inward, and ask, who wants them? And stay with that until the seeker, separate from its object of quest, dissolves, and there is nothing to seek. Only the radiant, silent self remains. P.S. The circus fades. The self shines. Joy is born.